All right, how's everybody doing? This is Dr. Smart Swag. I just want to share with the listeners a reading. This is from George Orwell's 1984. This is where you get the term Orwellian when we talk about a surveillance state and things of that nature. And a lot of times, a lot of people have not read 1984, or they read it when they were very young, and they didn't grab the enormity or the extent of what he was describing. That was my experience. I remember reading this in junior high school, and it was about 2 years ago when I decided to reread it. And when I reread 1984 by George Orwell, it was like another world opened up. And I was able to see my political, my social, my intellectual understanding was a lot more intense, as an adult. And so I'm now able to get a greater grasp of what he was writing about, and seeing it when you compare it to society. So I just want to read with you briefly. We're in this thing now where everybody's talking about fake news, who's controlling the media, and things of that nature. So I just want to read to you approximately 2 to 3 pages, if you bear with me, so you can get an understanding of what George Orwell was talking about back then when he wrote this. So I'm going to jump in from, this is page 39, and I'm going to start right here. And so the protagonist of the story, Winston is his name. He works he works for the government, and he works as an editor. Okay? All right, so here we go. As soon as all the corrections which happen to be necessary in any particular number of the Times have been assembled and collated, that number would be reprinted, the original copy destroyed, and the corrected copy placed on the files instead. This process of continuous alteration was applied not only to newspapers, but to books, to periodicals, to pamphlets, posters, leaflets, films, soundtracks, cartoons, photographs, to every kind of literature or documentation which might conceivably hold any political or ideological significance. Day by day and almost minute by minute, the past was brought up to date. In this way, every prediction made by the party could be shown by documentary evidence to have been correct. Nor was any item of news or any expression of opinion which conflicted with the needs of the moment ever allowed to remain on record. All history was a palimpsest, scraped clean, and reinscribed exactly as often as was necessary. In no case would it have been possible, once the deed was done, to prove that any falsification had taken place. The largest section of the records department, far larger than the one in which Winston worked, consisted simply of persons whose duty it was to track down and collect all copies of books, newspapers, and other documents which had been superseded and were due for destruction. A number of the Times meaning it was a magazine or newspaper, which might, because of changes in political alignment or mistaken prophecies uttered by Big Brother, have been rewritten a dozen times, still stood on files bearing its original date, and no other copy existed to contradict it. Books also were recalled and rewritten again and again, and were invariably reissued without any admission that any alteration had been made. Even the written instructions which Winston received, and which he invariably got rid of as soon as he dealt with them, never stated or implied that an act of forgery was to be committed. Always the reference was to slips, errors, misprints, or misquotations, which it was necessary to put right in the interest of accuracy. Okay? So there you see how the government was controlling all forms of media, And anything that didn't fall in line or was inconsistent with the ideals and philosophies of the government at hand was scraped clean, it was edited out, it was censored, and what the government of the day wanted, they inserted and made that the reality of the day, and all evidence of history was just erased, completely eradicated. Let me find another part of this section to share with you. Bear with me one second, please. Okay, this is interesting too. I find this very interesting because this is something else. When we talk about, you hear, they always come up with the jobs report. This month the jobs report came out and we created 60,000 new jobs. And then the next month, the jobs report came out. We're down 20,000 jobs in the hole. And then the next month comes up, we've created 100,000 jobs. And you're like, well, which one is it? And then you'll just hear a broad statement. Well, there's been a consistent rise in employment over the last 4 years. And so then you're like, well, I thought last month you said that we were down 10,000, but now you're saying there's a consistent. So I want you to listen to this part. It was merely the substitution of one piece of nonsense for another. Most of the material that you were dealing with had no connection with anything in the real world, not even the kind of connection that is contained in a direct lie. Statistics were just as much a fantasy in their original version as in their rectified version. A great deal of time you were expected to make them up out of your head. For example, the Ministry of Plenty's forecast had estimated the output of boots for the quarter at 145 million pairs of boots. The actual output was given as 62 million. Winston, however, in rewriting the forecast, marked the figure down to 57 million, so as to allow for the usual claim that the quota had been overfilled. In any case, 62 million was no nearer to the truth than 57 million, or than 145 million. Very likely, no boots had been produced at all. Likelier still, nobody knew how many had been produced, much less cared. All one knew was that every quarter, astronomical numbers of boots were produced on paper, while perhaps half the population of Oceania went barefoot. And so it was with every class of recorded fact, great or small. Everything faded away into a shadow world in which finally even the date of the year had become uncertain. So, and that was the end of that passage. So what you're seeing is the constant inconsistency. After a while, it wears down on the human psyche and human conscience, where it's like, well, we don't know what to believe. You say we're up, then we're down. We're up, then we're down. We're doing good, we're doing bad. We're seeing growth and expansion. We're seeing depression. We're seeing recession. And if you keep telling the person these contradictory facts, eventually a person is just going to lose interest and just say, well, whatever the case may be. And when that happens, the game is won. Now, I want to share 2 more passages with you, and then we'll call it a day. Getting back to the control of media. Okay. Let's start here. This is page 42. There were the huge printing shops with their sub-editors, their typography experts, and their elaborately equipped studios for the faking of photographs. There was the teleprogram section with its engineers, its producers, and its teams of actors, specially chosen for their skill in imitating voices. There were the armies of reference clerks whose job was simply to draw up lists of books and periodicals which were due for recall. There were the vast repositories where the corrected documents were stored, and the hidden furnaces where the original copies were destroyed. And somehow or other, quite anonymous, They were the directing brains who coordinated the whole effort and laid down the lines of policy which made it necessary that this fragment of the past should be preserved, that one falsified, and the other one rubbed out of existence. Okay? Continue reading. And the records department, after all, was itself only a single branch of the Ministry of Truth, whose primary job was not to reconstruct the past, but to supply the citizens of Oceania. Now, Oceania was the country where everybody lived. To supply the citizens of Oceania with newspapers, films, textbooks, telescreen programs. The telescreenings we'll call television. Telescreen programs, plays, novels, with every conceivable kind of information, instruction, or entertainment, from a statue to a slogan, from a lyric poem to a biological treatise, and from a child's spelling book to a Newspeak dictionary. And the ministry had not only to supply the multifarious needs of the party, but also to repeat the whole operation at a lower level for the benefit of the proletariat, meaning the poor people that are struggling to gain some form of equitable living. This is the downtrodden, the poor people of the country, the proletariat. There was a whole chain of separate departments dealing with the proletariat: literature, music, drama, and entertainment generally. Here were produced rubbishly newspapers containing almost nothing except sports, crime, and astrology, sensational 5-cent novelettes, films oozing with sex, and sentimental songs which were composed entirely by mechanical means on a special kind of kaleidoscope known as a versificator. There was even a whole subsection, pornosec, it was called in Newspeak, engaged in producing the lowest kind of pornography, which was sent out in sealed packets and which no party member other than those who worked on it were permitted to look at. So I'm going to stop there. Now, with everything that I've said, think it over. And like I said, that what I read to you was just within the 3 pages of the early stages of the book, like pages 39 to 43. So, and this book is approximately 325 pages when you include the afterword. So it's a very deep book that I encourage you to read. It'll broaden your horizon, your understanding. The fact that he was able to construct this type of novel, and what he saw and understood, I think this was also based on the fact that many of this was based on like communism and like Stalin, the Stalin regime, things of that nature. But he gives a very clear explanation and opens a window for you to see what things could be like. And you keep in mind that this was published in 1949, and it goes very deep into a lot of things. So I definitely think that you should check it out. I think it's very worthwhile knowing what's at stake. You look at the administration that's operating now. There's a lot of parallels and correlations that will blow your mind. I think I might continue doing some of these for you if you're interested. And that's about it. So once again, this is Dr. Smorey Swagger signing out. You can hit me on Twitter at DocSwag06, DOCSWAGG06. You can hit my YouTube channel, DOC space SWAGG. All right, I am out. Peace.